Good happy Sunday afternoon, everyone. October 21, 2018. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this edition of Politics with Riley King. Let's begin. Last weekend on Close Up, Congresswoman Annie Kuster makes her pitch for fourth term. Let's watch part of that video with WMUR Adam Sexton.
Just about 3 weeks to go until Election Day. The 2nd Congressional District features an incumbent who faced a closer than expected race in 2016, but she still won by about 4%. Midterms do tend to be kinder to the party out of power, but Democrat Annie Kuster is taking nothing for granted in this volatile political environment. Congresswoman Kuster, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Adam. Thanks so much.
Let's start with the basics. Why should voters send you back to Washington for a fourth term?
Well, it's the progress that we're making on really important issues, particularly the opioid epidemic and veterans. I brought together 105 members of Congress to work together in a bipartisan way. We passed 54 bills in June on the opioid epidemic, and we're really starting to gain some traction. $30 million now coming to New Hampshire because of the efforts that I put in to increase that percentage because we've been so hard hit. And on veterans, again, bringing people together. I was one of 2 Democrats on a bipartisan bill, the VA Mission Act, and I worked with Senator Sullivan from Alaska to make sure that New Hampshire veterans who are uniquely situated have the opportunity to get care in the community if that's what they need. So I'm proud of my record. I'll stand by it, and I very much look forward to one more term here to make a difference in people's lives.
The nation is still...
Okay, and there you go. I'm part of that video. If you want to watch the whole video, we will have a link for you on the Riley King Network Facebook page. Second District GOP candidate Steve Negron makes his pitch on Close Up from last Sunday. Let's watch the video from WMUR News 9, Adam Sexton.
Welcome back to Close Up. Steve Negron emerged as the winner from a busy Republican field in the primary. His goal now, unseat the incumbent and reclaim the CD2 seat for the GOP. Mr. Negron joins us this morning, and Steve, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Always good to be here.
So, safe to say you won this primary among the Republicans on your conservative credentials and your strong conservative reputation at the State House. The state second CD, though, used to be this kind of Yankee Republican territory. You see these more kind of moderate independent Republicans, even though that is really kind of on the way out. But are there any issues you can identify on which you would say you take a moderate stand?
Well, sure. I think what we just saw over the last week and a half, 2 weeks with the Kavanaugh issue, we were finding that there's a lot of people that are very uneasy by the way the government is going, specifically how they handle themselves in the hearings. You know, it's something that people are saying, you know, there is this dysfunction, and it really isn't necessarily issue-based, but it's a bigger picture, is like, where are we going? You know, what have we done? What have we become? So that's what we're hearing right now, is that where is that level of modicum and civility? You know, you can agree to disagree, and that's okay. I think healthy debate is important, and that's how we've gotten some great legislation passed. But what we've seen is this, you know, this kind of this pack mentality, and people, Democrats and independents alike, are saying, you know, that's not what we stand for. That's not what we are as Americans, and that's something that they want to change.
Hard to avoid that, though, if you end up going to Washington.
It is, but, you know, I think the situation is people all of a sudden say, you know, this is my ball, and if it's not my rules, I'm not playing here. You got to get rid of that. You know, I've said often, President Reagan used to say, if you agree with me 80% of the time, you're not my enemy. And I think we need to get back to a point that there are areas that we can agree on. You know, we talk about the debt. I think that that's something that everybody can come to an agreement on, and recognize that there is a problem with the debt. How do we fix it? Is where you get the work done. The opioid issue in our state is something that everybody agrees on. That's an issue. The nuances are, how do we get to the point where we can actually start fixing that things. So I think there's some larger issues that we all agree on. It's just when you get down into the worker area is where we have to find ourselves being collectively together.
Okay, and there you go on part of that video. If you want to watch the whole video, we will have a link for you on the Riley King Network Facebook page. Ex-Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe campaigns for Democrats in New Hampshire. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9.
With less than 3 weeks until Election Day, a former governor from Virginia is in the Granite State campaigning for Democrats. Terry McAuliffe left the governor's office in January. He spent time today with several Democrats running for office. This is one of 22 states McAuliffe has visited. He believes more effort needs to be focused on the governor's races across the country.
They spend a lot of time on the presidential, maybe the House and the Senate, but the governors are the most critical folks in the country. At the end of the day, we're in charge of the economy. We do the investment in schools. We're in charge of building the roads. We have to deliver the Medicaid, Medicare programs. That all happens at the state level.
And when asked if he's considering a presidential run in 2020, McAuliffe says he hasn't ruled anything out, but that he's not focused on that right now.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. St. Anselm College poll shows Sununu with 10 percentage point lead over Kelly in governor's race. The first New Hampshire base poll of the 2018 general election campaign shows Governor Chris Sununu holding a significant lead over Democratic challenger Molly Kelly, but falling just short of the 50% threshold. The St. Anselm College Survey Center polled 454 randomly selected registered voters October 10th to the 15th and found that Sununu leads Kelly 48.6% to 38.6%. Libertarian candidate Gillette Jarvis was chosen by 0.9% of those polled, and 11.8% were undecided. On the record, 3rd District debate, natural gas issue and President Trump. Let's watch part of that video from On the Record that happened today.
Can you guess the only real estate brand with agents who are smart home specialists? Now you can. Coldwell Banker, the real estate company with real advantages.
On the Record special, the debate for the 3rd congressional seat. 2 political newcomers vying to represent the district north of Boston. Consultant Lori Trahan and businessman Rick Green, head to head right now on OTR.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of On the Record this morning, the race for the 3rd congressional seat. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. Thank you for joining us. So let's meet the candidates this morning. Lori Trahan beat out 9 others in the September primary to become the Democrat nominee for the 3rd. 44-year-old business consultant and CEO of Consider Leadership Institute, grew up in Lowell. She now lives in Westford, Massachusetts. Trahan was chief of staff to former Congressman Marty Meehan when he represented the district. She is a graduate of Georgetown University School of Foreign Service in the Advanced Management Program at Harvard Business School.
Republican nominee Rick Green is co-founder and CEO of 1A Auto, one of the country's largest online auto parts companies. The 48-year-old lives in Pepperell and holds a degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering from Cornell University, and he once worked for NASA. He also earned an MBA from the University of Virginia. Green founded the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance, a conservative fiscal watchdog group.
All right, let's set the boundaries. First of all, the 3rd congressional district has been represented by Democrat Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas, who is now retiring. There are 37 cities and towns in the 3rd across parts of Middlesex, Essex, and Worcester counties. Lawrence, Lowell, Haverhill, Gardner, Fitchburg are some of the communities in the 3rd. There were more than 735,000 residents in that district as well. And here are the rules. And the rules for the debate are simple. Each candidate gets a minute to answer and then 30 seconds for rebuttal if needed. A coin toss is determined that Republican Rick Green gets the first question. Now let me show you what they will be saying. They will be given a cue to say 15 seconds, and then 15 seconds, and it will be shown time is up. So that's the way we will communicate with them. Let's begin. Janet Wu starts.
So let's start with the biggest controversy right now in the 3rd, and it has to do with Columbia Gas. Mr. Green, are you satisfied with Columbia Gas's response so far since the disaster, and what do you propose, if anything, be done by the federal government? You've got 60 seconds.
Absolutely. Well, I think the most important thing is for the people of the district is how do we keep them safe? I used to build rockets, and I understand these pressure systems. And what you have here is you have these pressure lines that were subjected to a pressure way beyond their design pressure. So it's like a balloon. You blew it up and it went too far, it exploded. Those were the tragedy of the explosions. But the ones that came back, now they're testing all of those to see which ones are okay. But what worries me is they may test out okay today, but 2, 3, 4 years from now, are we going to have more gas leaks? Are we going to have fires, explosions? And I have the technical expertise to make sure that the bureaucracy and everybody who's looking at that, that they're keeping the people safe, that we have the right maintenance routines in place to do that.
But are you happy with the way they have been responding since the disaster, and do you think they're moving quickly enough?
Look, I'm not on the inside, so it's hard to judge. What I am happy with is Governor Baker and the job he's done. He and Karen Polito coming in, taking charge. I put my trust in them.
And so you don't want to weigh in at all as to whether folks at home should be dissatisfied or the customers should be dissatisfied, they don't have their gas, they don't have heat?
There's time for the blame game afterwards. Right now, the most important thing is winter's coming up, and we need to get these folks in their home, the gas turned on and the heat turned on, and make sure they're going to be safe. That's the most important thing.
Ms. Trahan?
No, I don't believe that we should be satisfied. I mean, the reality is we've got thousands of families who are without gas. It's going to be less than 30 degrees tonight. So the effort that needs to happen in terms of getting people into homes or hotel rooms, into RVs, which have been mobilized, I mean, that is through the leadership of the mayor of Lawrence, through the chief recovery officer and the consortium of construction companies that have been on the ground day in and day out trying to, replace pipes, service lines, and certainly those appliances. But that needs to happen in an accelerated way because November 19th is too far away.
You don't have any specific instructions on what are proposed ideas for what they should be doing that they're not doing now?
Anything that we can do to have more work crews and have more people who can accelerate the timeline, because our Indian summer is over now. We need to be looking at the weather, and we need to be moving quickly. I mean, we have to get to the bottom of what happened. I mean, the reason why Senators Markey and Warren called for an investigation is because this can never happen again. We can never have an instance where homes are blowing up and in our district and in our country.
Mr. Green, do you have a rebuttal or?
Okay, and there you go on part of that video and debate. If you want to watch that full video, we will share a link with you on the Riley King Network Facebook page. Trump says GOP working on tax plan for middle class. Republicans are looking into implementing an additional tax break for the middle-income Americans ahead of the midterms election, President Donald Trump said on Saturday. Trump will accept Crown Prince denial on Khashoggi like Putin's denial. Let's take a listen to the video from ABC News, part of the video.
Every child needs clothing to wear, and we discovered we can really help people with disabilities just by doing a few things differently with our Cat and Jack clothing. The really great part about working on this type of product is meeting the families.
I just hugged her. I just had to hug her and tell her how important this is. Thanks to the Cat and Jack adaptive line, Bentley just gets to be a kid for once.
We're now joined by two key members of the House Intelligence Committee, Ranking Democrat Adam Schiff, Republican Peter King. And Congressman Schiff, let me begin with you. You've received briefings on this situation, and you said that the Saudi cover story is not credible. What more can you tell us about what you know?
Well, I got a detailed briefing from the intelligence community about what they know, what they can tell us at this point. And while I can't go into the substance of it, I can tell you I don't find this Saudi account credible at all. There's simply no way they dispatched a team this large and that Khashoggi engaged in some kind of a brawl with them unless he was merely fighting for his life. But I think we can see where this is headed. Ultimately, the president is going to accept the Crown Prince's denials. But it's hard for me to imagine that these orders would have been carried out without the knowledge of the Crown Prince. I think this ought to be a relationship-altering event for the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, that we ought to suspend military sales, we ought to suspend certain security assistance, and we ought to impose sanctions on any of those that were directly involved in this murder. This really ought to be something that causes us to do a re-examination of our relationship with Saudi Arabia.
You agree with that, Congressman King?
I believe that, first of all, the president should go all the way on this as far as this is a first step. That's all it is. It's really not a believable first step. The important thing is they're admitting that he was killed when he was in their custody. But there's no way that one person, basically an overweight civilian, has to be killed when he's facing up to 12 or 15 professionals. They could have brought him down in a matter of seconds without causing any physical harm at all. So obviously there was an intent, I believe, to kill him. That's number one. Number two, though, we do have a relationship with Saudi Arabia that we should try to maintain. Listen, during the Obama administration, I led the fight in the House to allow 9/11 families to sue Saudi Arabia. President Obama fought us every step of the way, and we had to override his veto. So all presidents want to maintain some sort of relationship. But where Adam and I think, can agree is that that relationship cannot allow savagery such as this. So I would ask the president to try to thread the needle here. One, two, whether it involves imposing sanctions, whether it involves delaying arms sales, making a clear statement of condemnation at the end, but still not hurt ourselves, because the Saudis do provide very effective intelligence. They are a bulwark against Iran, and they have been working closely with Israel. You put all that together, we have to try to balance it. The world is not that simple, but again, what happened here was savagery, and we can't go along with their cover story.
So,
okay, and there you go on part of that video. If you want to watch the full video, we will have a link for you on the Riley King Network Facebook page. And that does it for this edition of Politics with Riley King. I hope you all enjoyed this edition of Politics with Riley King. I'll see you back here next Sunday for another edition of Politics with Riley King. Goodbye, everyone.